Now, if people don't know what battle rap is, I usually say if you've seen Eminem in 8 Mile, it's a bit like that.
On the left, we're from Manchester, semi-famous spoken word poet, 61 years old, make some noise, the Joy Bros!
There's lots more to the story, but basically, I got an opponent called Blunt Ted.
Blunt Ted!
If I actually say some of the things that he said to me in the battle, you'll have to bleep it all out.
You push same old, same old, same old. Yes, I have a vagina, but I've also got balls.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds, the show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's show we're joined by Joy France, a former teacher turned battle rapper. Joy spent decades working in education, living what she describes as a fine but unremarkable life. That all changed in her 50s, when a series of strange coincidences and a one-off poetry workshop in Wigan completely transformed her path. Since then, Joy's become a poet, a performer, a creative disruptor, and yes, even a battle rapper. At nearly 70, Joy is not just challenging stereotypes, she's blowing them up one verse at a time.
I actually grew up quite close to it. Well, a lot of my life was. I grew up in Little Hulton on Kenyon Way.
Yep.
And I knew a lot in this area as growing up. And also I used to be a head teacher in charge of a pupil referral unit in Clifton, which is only a stone's throw from here.
It is.
So, I arrived here today thinking, I'm sure this was, what was this building? So, that's where my roots are, in quite local. And I was a very, very strange, quiet child. When I say quiet, I was fine at home or with my friends, but if I went out anywhere, I just wouldn't speak to anybody. I just hated it. I just wanted to be invisible.
Why was that, do you think?
I know now, because it's just before lockdown, I got a diagnosis of autism. So it was me just feeling like I didn't know how to fit in, so I wanted to just not fit in.
And back then they wouldn't have offered any sort of help, even if they wouldn't even considered it, would they? Presumably.
No. And I was very clever at just staying in the middle. I sort of never stood out anywhere, especially at school. And then I made the mistake of passing my 11 plus. And I went to Audley Grammar, which is just a stone's throw down the road as well, and away from everything I knew. But I was a child who tried never to break rules. I never pinched icing off the cake or wrote in the margins of books. Or I just tried to do everything perfectly. And really, I wanted people not to judge me.
Yeah.
So if I didn't do
to sort
much,
of blend in,
very much blend in. So that's what I did. I grew up and did what was the sorts of things. I did go and become a teacher, but I wasn't in teaching a big school where you have to talk to all sorts of kids. I did special needs. And
must have been tough, that, though, still.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. It started with primary school and eventually worked with teenagers and things. But slowly getting a little bit of confidence and a bit, you can't be a teacher and not.
No.
But again, it's all in small groups and working with families.
Yeah, it's the regular faces, right?
Rather than a sea of faces in a massive assembly. I never did that. And life just, I did the sorts of things that you're supposed to do, got married and then got divorced. I travelled all over, lived abroad for a short while, for a few years, came back and we had a son. And then when it all fell apart, moved back to Salford and just got on with life. And everything was fine, but it wasn't exciting. It wasn't. It was fine.
Were you actively thinking at the time, like, everything's fine, but it's not exciting? Or was it just an expectation?
I think once my son went to university and it was just me, and I didn't have to focus on lots of things, it was like, what's going on? What is this? Is this what I'm doing for the rest of my life? I was quite enjoying the work that I was doing, but I used to say to the kids, who needed to change some behaviours or anything, that old
It's a very
saying.
polite way of saying it there, Joy.
Yeah, it's like, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, sort of thing. And I just thought to myself, well, if I'm ever going to shake things up, I'm going to have to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to have to, because life's not going to shake things up for me. And I haven't got the confidence to do a lot of things, so how am I going to do it? So I decided, I don't know where it came from, but in life, I don't know whether it ever happens to you, you get coincidences happen.
Yeah.
I thought, well, what if I follow these coincidences? If something happens and something else happens, then if I have the guts to go and see where it takes me, I might have an interesting time.
Yeah, rather than ignore it, just embrace it.
I had an interesting year. So this was in my 50s.
Okay.
And I did so many strange things. Do you want one?
Go for it. I want all of them.
I remember thinking, this is really, things have got shaken up. When I was going to something in Manchester, and I went to book online, and I saw that just before it, there was something to do with cabbages at the corner house. And I thought, well, that's really strange, because cabbages have come up so many times in conversations today. So it was free, so I booked myself on it, not even looking what it was, just thinking, right, I'm going to go. Yeah. Cut a very long story short, there's this Chinese artist who travels the world taking cabbages with him, because he carries them around as part of a protest and about industrialisation, and cabbages saved his country from famine. And so he goes around the world and he gets hundreds of people to get cabbages on leads and take them for walks through the city. So anyway, on the Saturday, I ended up taking cabbages for a walk through the streets of Manchester with this artist. And then it got even weirder, because at one point I went a bit further ahead to take a photograph. And suddenly I see them all stop, and they all have this weird look of the face, like, what's going on? And I turn around and there's these three lads, one with a V for Vendetta mask, the other two with gas masks on, coming towards them. And I turned to get these three lads and said, look, I know it looks weird, but, don't get worried. Just trust us. We're not whatever. And then what was really weird, I turned to the cabbage people and said, I know these three guys. They're doing an anti-Scientology protest down on Deansgate. And I stood there thinking, life has got a bit weird. I'm in the middle of Manchester taking a cabbage on a lead with these, and I've got these, and then it even got weirder. On the way home, I called at my mum's, who still lived on Kenyon Way. I went having a brew, and I said to her, you never guess what I've been doing today? I've been taking cabbage for a walk with about 100 other people. And she said, that's a coincidence. I said, what do you mean it's a coincidence? She says, go and ask your Auntie Joan. She says, you were in your pram. You never, your very first words, we were just talking and you said, cabbages. That was your first words. And I'm like, she's never told me that before. I thought, yeah, life's just weird. And I don't stop to try and figure it out. I'm not doing anything. I'm just loving it when that happens. So rather than spending lots of time analysing it or anything. So.
And so this was when in your 50s?
In my 50s. And one of them, the pivotal one, was I ended up going to a 1-hour poetry writing workshop in Wigan on a Saturday afternoon. And basically thinking, well, I'll go, but I'm not going to be sharing any or writing anything. I'll just cut another long story, very short. The woman who I sat next to introduced herself to me as a performance poet. And I said, what do you mean a performance poet? And she explained. And then at the end of it, she said she was putting an event on in Wigan at the Museum of Wigan Life about Wigan. Would I write a poem and perform it? And I thought,
you've got to say yes, right?
Say yes and think, no, that's terrible. Me standing up, what have I done? So I was so nervous because I really didn't like speaking. I hated the sound of my voice. So I missed all the rehearsals. And in the end, I said, look, I will come along, but I think you're just going to have to skip. So I wrote a poem, a comedy one about Wigan pies. And I actually got up and did it. And I shook like mad. And I was, at the end of it, I thought, I am so brave. But never again am I going to do anything like that. Oh,
brilliant. I can't wait to tell everyone what else you've been up to.
Well, what actually happened was, I went for, there was a open mic poetry night a pub in Wigan. So I used to sit at the back or sit at the other room once a month. And then one day I got the courage to get up and actually do my poem again and wasn't as scared. And so the next month I did it without having the words in front of me. The next I did a comedy one or an audio. So for about a year, I was building up my confidence.
Yeah.
And then I started going further afield and getting guest spots and winning slams and thinking, oh my God, I actually can do this.
Yeah, I'm quite good at it.
And I've got things to say and I can do it.
Have you always been kind of like into poetry and things? Or
I've liked poetry, yeah, but nothing.
not performative anyway?
Oh God, no, not at all. Nothing. I wouldn't do anything performing until my mid-50s. And then having found my voice and found my confidence, there was no choice. There's no way I could go back to the way I was before. That, this was me. I'd waited half a century to be me. So I was going to make up for time lost, really.
And how has that presented itself? What have you been doing since that sort of pivotal moment?
Well, I gave up my job. I took early retirement for a start.
Intentionally to try and pursue
to give myself, to be poor, but give myself a year to see where this creativity could go.
Love that.
Then I would go and get some supply work. So I had a year where I was poet in residence in 3 places, so in the Lake District, United Against Injustice in Liverpool, and a charity shop in Culcheth. And I did lots of exciting things, performed at festivals and had a great time.
Amazing.
And then when I came back, I thought, right, I've got to be grown up now. So I've had my fun year. And somebody asked me, would I go and talk to the manager at Afflecks in Manchester about what a poet in residence was? And so I sat down with this guy who I'd never met, and he just says, what's a poet in residence? And off the top of my head, I said, Affleck shouldn't have a poet in residence. They should have a creative in residence, somebody who celebrates, promotes, records, creativity of all kinds, dance and knitting and music, every sort. And you should give them a space for free, one of the shop spaces, and just have an experiment and see if a community can grow and staff can use it, and traders and as well as the public, and just see what would happen. And he took a deep breath and he looked at me and said, "Okay, if I give you a space for 3 months, will you do it?"
That's insane.
And I'm like, okay, I'll delay being a grown-up for another 3 months. And I basically set up, I did a one-woman show for a week in Edinburgh as part of the Fringe.
Yeah.
Came back, got this empty space, put a sign up saying, free to use creative space, come in, and the only rule is be nice, but it's not funded, so is there anything you can donate? And within a week or two, it was full of guitars and sofas and tables, and it was just everything. There was just things drawn on every inch of the walls and the ceiling. It was just beautiful, and I basically had that for, as well as all the other things. I actually had that space for 7 years.
Wow!
And I'm still linked to Afflecks as their creative in residence, but yeah, I've not got the room, but I actually decided to close it after COVID. I came back in as the shops opened and sat there early in the morning thinking, right, I've got to close this down now.
Wow.
And as I sat there feeling like, I didn't have the energy for it or anything, this young lad comes bounding up the 3 flights of stairs, comes rushing to the door. He'd never seen me before because it just stayed open whether I was there or not. And he said, "Oh my God, it's still here. I needed to know this was here. I'm going to be late for college. I don't care. I just needed to know it was here." I thought, this is the wrong time people need to come and use this space where they're connected with their creativity, and there was an amazing community. So I kept it open for a couple more years. And but during that space, shall I move on to something that's really weird?
Go for it.
Now, I know you know this because you've watched a documentary. But the way it happened was, I was in the creative space, just minding my own business. These 2 young lads come in. And I just say to them, "Are you creative?" And they always do. And one of them said that he wrote poetry, but he'd never shared any of his poems before. And we chatted and everything. And he said, "Look, if I get my phone out, can I do a poem for you?" And he did. He got his poem out and he read it. And, it's a big privilege when somebody does that, and he'd never read it in front of his friend either, or whatever. So I said, "Right, I'll do a poem for you." And I've got a poem that's called Running, and it's got a bit of rhythm to it. So I did this poem. And at the end of it, they both laughed and said, "That's not poetry, that's rap." And one of them said, "You should do rap." And the other one said, laughed, turned to his friend, he said, "No, she should do battle rap." And they laughed and they left. What they didn't know was at the time I had 3 months to do 60 new things before I turned 60.
And they've just given you one of them.
Well, rap and battle rap went on this long list of things that maybe could happen. And I just kept looking at it and thinking, it's never going to happen. How could it? And what I knew about battle rap was that it was everything I loathed. It was misogynistic and homophobic and gross. And I thought, well, could I give it a go and just try and change people's perceptions about a short, fat, old, white-haired woman and whether I could give them a run for the money? Could I take this horrific environment? Would I be brave enough? So I kept looking at it thinking, I don't know how to make this happen, but it'd be amazing. I think if it ever comes and coincidences happen and I find a way in, I'm going to do it.
But people must genuinely think you're mad at that point when you start.
Well, I haven't told anybody yet.
Okay.
Apart from the fact
So it's just ruminating in your head at the minute.
It's on my list. Every time I look at the list, it's in my head. And it's just this madcap thing that, that if I ever did it, I'd probably just go viral for all the wrong reasons. But one day, there's a small northern documentary filmmakers called Northern Hearts. We're doing a documentary about this older guy, quite an eccentric, lovely old guy, and just following him. And he was a regular who used to come into the space. So they're coming around with this guy. And then they start chatting to me. And then I tell them I'm doing 60 new things. And they said, "Oh, come on, can we have a look at the list?" Sort of thing. So they look at the list and they say, "Battle rap." And I'm thinking, oh my God, he says, if you ever do that, we'd love to do something about it. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, it's a Saturday, I'm heading into Manchester to go to Afflecks, and my phone rings, and the same woman, Louise Fazackley, who had sat next to in that course all those years ago, was on the phone saying, "I forgot to mention, Joe, we've got some training going on in Wigan at the old courts today. It's about applying for funding for projects and things. I really should have invited you along." I said, "Oh, it's all right, I'll come along." So I turned around, headed back there. I walked in, and the person running the course was the person I knew from poetry, who I knew was a battle rapper.
No way.
Right. Martin Stanage, he's well known in Manchester for years for doing, but I knew he did. I didn't know anything about what he did other than I knew he did battle rap. So it got to the dinner time and I went up to him and said, "Look, can I ask you a question? But you need to be completely honest with me." I said, "I'm thinking of having a go at battle rap. What do you think?" And he said, "Yes, Joe, yes, you've got to do it."
Not the answer you wanted.
It wasn't. And he says, "No, not more than that." He says, "I'm going to make it happen."
Brilliant.
So he got in touch with a league owner. It was like an alternative punk type league called King of the Ronalds. And he got in touch with the league owner and explained. And the league owner said, "No way." He said, "We're not a gimmick. We do things differently, but we're not,
Yes, actually quite protective of their own scene, right?
Yeah. But luckily for me, the league was putting an event on in Coventry, organised by the other guy who ran it from Manchester called Boski, who knew Martin really well. And Boski said, "Yeah, I'll find us someone."
So is it like a league facing another league?
It's the same league,
right?
But he's gone over the head of the main guy who was running it. And so I'm then faced with the fact that I have got a battle coming up now. If people don't know what battle rap is, I usually say, if you've seen Eminem in 8 Mile, it's a bit like that. It's brutal. It's literally 3 rounds, an opponent versus another, trying to big yourself up, destroy the other person through either aggression or wordplay or comedy or there's just lots of different.
It's brutal, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. And I'm being told that yes, they can get me a battle. So I let the documentary people know.
There's been a development.
There's lots more to the story, but basically I got an opponent called Blunt Ted. Now, if I actually say some of the things that he said to me in the battle, you'll have to bleep it all out. And at this point it gets, because I contacted him and said, "Look, I know you don't know who I am, but can you do this for real?"
Yeah, because presumably you don't want to be a gimmick either.
No,
like, they
exactly.
Don't,
If I'm doing it, I want to know I've done it.
Yeah,
Exactly. What I haven't mentioned is at the same time I'd got some work because my poetry I'd had a few adverts on the celly for the Nationwide that were everywhere. If you went in the cinemas, if you went everywhere, there's pictures of me in every window and everything. It's gone really crazy. So anyway, I watched all these battles and he was always drunk and everything, so I prepared. And then on the actual day, which was terrifying, but when I spoke to him, he'd been sober for 6 months. That's why they'd let him back. And he says, I've been really intimidated every time I go to the ATM machine. You're looking at me. You know, he says, so I'm really scared of you. And I'm like, what? It's me. Sort of like, anyway, to cut a very, very long story short, I won that battle and thought, right, I've done it, but I'm stepping away now.
Yeah, you've ticked the box.
Yeah.
You're happy.
But what I hadn't realised is how many nice people I'd met. All these people who were in the battles were really aggressive or horrible, were gentle as anything. They were lovely.
Well, I think that's probably the interesting thing I found, because obviously I watched the documentary and it was very, it's like dark, dingy, back streets, underground, doesn't look particularly friendly. I'd probably feel a bit nervous being in there watching it, let alone...
The documentary crew, you could look more scared than I was.
Yeah. So how did you find,
Well, obviously I was nervous, and the idea was I would just do my best, and I did win it. And I did discover that when it went up on YouTube, I was really worried, thinking this is...
Like double judgment there, right? Because you've got the initial audience in the actual underground thing, but that's
gone
limited.
Well, but now it's going to go out there.
Yeah.
And then I started reading the comments, and it's like, choice of goats, choice of goats. And I'm like, I didn't know what goat meant. They're the greatest of all time, which they were just being lovely. And I didn't realise how much it was, because I was meant to just step away from it. But it's a beautiful community. It seriously is. I'm just absolutely one of them. And that was, goodness knows how many years ago now. I've had loads of battles since. I've battled in Dublin and Belfast and London. I've battled on one battle on Don't Flop, one no-showed me like a few weeks ago. And I've started doing stand-up comedy about it. And, I do tell people on the stand-up comedy, I've still got my friends, Susan, who I never see because she's always on cruises, and Eric's always on the golf course, and Brenda's really boring. She tells me how she makes a porridge every time I meet her. But I've also got friends called Bacon and Raptor and Maddo and Scully, and and these are genuine friends. And I'm just So it's gone from being something like the poetry that I was going to do once and then run away from, to being a massive part of my life.
It's mad, isn't it? Just through the power of embracing something and saying, yeah, I'll give it a go. And it's just opened up this kind of work.
It's taking that risk, thinking, from spending a lifetime of thinking, what are people going to say, to changing the mindset to, people are probably going to say things I don't like. But if I'm not doing anybody any harm, I'm enjoying it, or I'm finding something out about myself, I'm going to do it. And so I've, completely turned my thinking around.
And I'm sure you probably do appreciate it now, but inspiring people along the way.
And being inspired along the way. I think that's the whole thing, because people say, oh, you're a real inspiration. I think, I don't want to be an inspiration. I want to just live my life, and people take from my life whatever they want, and I'll take from their life.
Meanwhile, you're having all these new opportunities to take from that. Exactly.
And when I turned, so I started doing 60 new things before I turned 60. I'm now trying to do 70 things before I'm 70.
And are they 70 brand new things? Not rollovers?
No, brand new things.
Wow.
And I was giving a talk. This is how you came across the documentary, wasn't it? I was doing a workshop, talks, keynote. I do a lot of workshops and talks and all sorts of things to a group of women who were business women in Manchester. And I was giving this talk and basically saying things along the lines of, like, if you've ever wanted to just, I don't know, play the saxophone, why don't you? Why wait? And this woman at that said, I play the saxophone. Right. And then when I actually said, and I'm doing 70 new things, I've now joined clown school. I'm learning to be a clown. She said, I'm a clown. And then you interviewed her a few weeks ago. She's amazing. Yeah. So you meet these people along the way just by being out there, and you know, you don't know what you're doing. So like, when I was battling in London, I spoke to my opponent and said, look, no, let's keep this secret, but how about we do our third round on beat rather than doing a cappella like it's in the documentary? Let's surprise everyone, because he's well known for doing rap to a beat. So I chose a grime beat, and we were going to actually do it as the third round, and he no-showed me. So I'm really, really cheesed off now. So what I've been doing is actually writing some proper rap music now to rather, you know, because it's rather than just feeling resentful. I was thinking, right,
channel this into something
this
new.
This is going to be, and maybe I will have a full-on beat battle with somebody at some point. So it's just, I don't know, being open to. It isn't a challenge, joy, and whatever people say I've got to do it.
No. It's got to be something that you... What else is on the list? Or can you not say? What's on the 70 that you've still got to do that you'd like to?
I've actually done quite a lot already, to be
What
honest.
have you done?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm currently learning some... this part of what I'm doing, one of the things I'm doing later today, I'm learning DJ skills.
Cool.
Just to say whether I'm good at it, not good at it. I did an event a bit ago in Sheffield for they call the Crohn's group, and it's like older people who are doing it differently. They're not sat knitting or whatever. And my stuff went down really well there. I had a great time. And the DJ there said, "Well, if you learn DJ skills, come back next year and do a set." So I'm gonna whatever happens, I'm gonna go back there next year and do my own DJ set. And you just do something, and then somebody says, have you done this or have you tried that? So I've got this massive list already.
Love it.
So it's not really about the numbers.
No, it's more the new experiences.
Yeah, but you get that conversation with other people when you say you're doing 70 things before 70. The beautiful thing is, one of my 70 things that I want to do is I want to make my own documentary. My own documentary will involve something to do with what happened next in the world of battle rap, but it'll also involve some of the people I've met who've decided to do their own bucket list, or it was like somebody said, "God, I turned 30 in a few months' time. I thought I had to wait till I was older before I did all these things. I'm going to get things done." So actually following some other people who've decided, it doesn't have to be a bucket list, but just to. I was at something literally last week, and this guy who said he turns 30 soon, I think it's a compliment. He says, right, from now on, you're going to be my spirit animal. Every time I'm going to have a different attitude to doing things, he says, and I'm going to think, be more joy.
Yeah, channel the inner joy.
Yeah. Which is, and I'm curious to see whether that does happen. Does he make some changes in positive or not? And it's, because that's not what I'm out to do, but it's a byproduct of what I've been doing.
Yeah, it's a lovely byproduct. Making people wake up earlier than they should, I guess, to do things.
And even if they choose not to do them, they've made a deliberate choice rather than thinking, should, I shouldn't, and they make a choice one way or the other, then at least they've, it's a decision at least.
Yeah.
So.
And to anyone listening to this, what's your advice you'd give them from a point of getting up and doing something?
I think the general advice would be, there are people who don't give a damn about anybody else and whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying just don't give a damn. I'm just saying, think about what you might want to do differently or out of the ordinary, or just could be something big, something small. If you're not harming anybody else, and the thing that's holding you back are those voices of, oh, I shouldn't be doing this because I'm old, or because I'm this, or because, I'm a woman, or because whatever. What will people say? It's those voices that need silencing, because they don't count. People who know you, know what you're about, know who you are. If when I did the adverts, I got loads of good stuff, but you go up on, look at all the comments, and people say, oh, don't look at the comments. And I look because I think they're funny. Oh my God, she's got a voice like you're scraping your nails down a whiteboard, and did she get dressed with her eyes closed this morning? And I'm just like, that's the thing with battle rap. I can take it because I've been so worried about what people say that now people can say what they want. I know who I am. I know that, I keep saying no harm, possibly some good on the way. But I just think people of all ages hold back. There's a lot of fear we put on ourselves, but also hang-ups of voices and people we've had in our lives before. Negative people stay with us, and I've got rid of all those. And I try and listen to the positive, honest, positive things. You know, I don't mean nobody should criticise me. Of course they should. But I keep it in perspective, whereas I never used to. I used to let things get big in my head. So I still hate the sound of my voice. I hate doing this. I hate talking into the microphone. I hate listening it back. But I'll just do it.
Yeah, just get on with it.
Yeah. You know, it's me. And, you know, you're a long time dead, aren't you? I don't know how much longer I've got or what quality of life I've got. You know, when you start approaching 70 and you lose people in your life, then again, it's like, yeah, time is precious. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not crazily going through life just always doing crazy things. I have bloody downtime as well. And, you know, I just keep a nice balance. And some of these things, like the battle rap or the poetry, really take hold. And other things, I've done something once, right, I've done it, don't want to do it again. But at least I know.
That's it. People give it a go and try something new.
Yeah.
That was the incredible and inspirational Joy France. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week, and please do make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can also sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager Dan Brown and, of course, to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.